No, I have visited this morning and this afternoon before I came here several polling stations. Of course, I visited mostly northern Tehran, which is inhabited by middle class, mainly middle class and upper middle class professionals, Iranian, and the turnout was significant. There were large queues at some polling stations right from early in the morning. So, judging on these polling stations, we can't say that the turnout has been low. If indeed reports coming from other towns and cities across the country suggest that the turnout would be very high.
Okay, Ms. Hunter from the U.S., what do you think can we expect from this election? Two elections going on. One is the parliament, the other is clerical council. What can we expect?
Well, I think that, we shouldn't expect, there's one thing we shouldn't expect, and that is a parliament that would be dominated, shall we say that, excessively by the reformers or even the moderates, or as President Rouhani keeps saying, the middle of the road, people that are basically have a balanced approach to political issues. But on the other hand, I don't think that the parliament is going to be totally also dominated by conservatives, in a sense that to making it almost impossible for President Rouhani's government to achieve any sort of its program. I think it will be a mixed parliament, something that it will not allow Rouhani to basically do everything that he wants to do, but that it will not also paralyze the government.
All right, Professor Ziba Kalam, I have to come back to you. You are in Iran. You probably have a better sense than all of us. What Ms. Hunter just mentioned is a very crucial issue. The conservatives vis-a-vis the so-called reformists inside Iran. President Rouhani, of course, at the very beginning of his term, Professor Ziba Kalam, he promised about not only a nuclear deal with the rest of the world, but also more freedom, personal freedom, together with more freedom on the internet as well. So this election, many conceive it as important to the extent as to what the president can deliver for the next few years. Professor Ziba Kalam, what is your analysis?
I think that Professor Hunter, Shireen Hunter, is right. The struggle in this election, the fighting in this election, call it the competition in this election, is not mainly between the conservatives and reformists. It's actually between the more conservatives and the less conservative, because the present Majlis, the present Iranian parliament, have been very much dominated by the hardline conservative. They opposed every move that Rouhani made. They even opposed the nuclear deal. They opposed every move that Rouhani made towards lifting of the sanction, to make Iranian society more open politically, socially, as well as economically. So we are hoping that the next parliament, which would start the early summer next Iranian year in July, would be less dominated by the hardliners.
Ms. He, as an observer from afar, what is your understanding of the latest situation? Professor Ziba Kalam put it in a very interesting way. The more conservative vis-a-vis the less conservative. Is that what you see as the realities on the ground? What would that mean for the eventual decision making in Iran?
Well, another thing of this election is maybe that should be mentioned. No matter moderate or reformist or conservative, now they are all united to vis-a-vis who? Those hardliners. So they are dominated this parliament for the past decades. So that's why our Iranian colleague mentioned whenever Rouhani put forward some new approach or like foreign minister, when he made several rounds of negotiation with those Western countries on the sanction issue, and then they will be called upon to the parliament. They will throw a lot of questions to either a foreign minister and the President Rouhani. So I think this election itself is very important in terms of this is the very first one after this nuclear deal has been reached. So it will give a direction saying what kind of road lying ahead for the another half of this presidency term for the President Rouhani. And also it will, the long-term goal is for the next Supreme Leader, because that's assembly of experts will decide the next Supreme Leader. So that's guiding for the long-term political future for Iran, for this country. So what kind of road this country will heading for?
But the question is, Ms. Hunter, really, what does that nuclear deal really mean for Iran, for Iranians' internal politics? Is that going to be a huge plus for President Rouhani and the so-called less conservative group, or rather it is going to be an interesting point, the other groups going to attack President Rouhani and also the less conservative in a big way?
Well, before I answer that, which I would like to answer it, it seems to me that we have to be also very careful not to give Parliament an excessive role in deciding policy in Iran. The
Very
policy
true.
in Iran is decided at a different level. Obviously, Supreme Leader is at the top of the pyramid, but there are other elements, whether it is the military in the form of Sepah or other, economic and power groups. And so that is really where we have to look. I mean, someone mentioned that a lot of the parliamentarians opposed the nuclear deal. That is true, but the nuclear deal was nevertheless passed. So it seems to me that we shouldn't pay really, I don't think that Parliament can be very, annoying at times, but I think that decisions on major economic and foreign policy are taken outside of the Parliament. Now, as how important nuclear deal is. Nuclear deal obviously is very important, partly because, or mainly because, it lifts the sanctions on Iran. But we have to wait and see that actually are all of these sanctions completely lifted. I mean, for example, despite the lifting of sanctions, a lot of the banking operations and so on are not still returned to normal. There is the pivotal role of U.S. still in these things. In other words, if we have, I would say that the American presidential elections are going to be more important in deciding the future of the nuclear deal than the Iranian elections. If we have a president in U.S. that, Congress wants to have sanctions again, or if they don't allow the European banks to deal with Iran. So my feeling is that there's a lot of hype about Iran's elections, but I think that we have really to be very careful and realize that what are the real centers of policy making in Iran. Parliament is important, but not vital.
That is a crucial point. Parliament is important, certainly not vital. Even the clerical council, which is supposed to elect and select the successor to the supreme leader, eventually has the role now only select those already being put in as the candidates. Of course, those candidates are being decided outside the clerical council. So those are very interesting and very important details because the devils are in the details. Professor Ziba Kalam, I have to come back to you. Exactly what are we talking about? The real essence that we really need to observe about this election. Or this election is just going to be one of those, political process that the country goes through from time to time, and yet it is not going to be the core of the politics. And we cannot even observe about the core of the politics inside the country through this election. Is that true?
The situation has been very much according to what you and Professor Shireen Hunter described. That is, Majlis or the Iranian parliament hasn't been very much an effective institution. But if we go through Iranian constitution, we would see that a lot of power has been assigned to the Majlis. Unfortunately, Majlis have been packed by deputies that they have been very docile towards the government, and they have not been courageous enough to exercise their independence and their own mind. They have looked upon the government, and if the government appears to be in favor of this policy or that policy, they have shifted and they have moved towards that policy. We are hoping that as a result of today's election, we would have at least a dozen, 20, 30, 40 even, of a more independent candidate, a more independent deputies in the parliament, so that they could help to give the power of the parliament back and to bring more independence to the Majlis.
Ms. He in Beijing, this is a very important deal, the nuclear deal Iran had with the rest of the world. How much would you think that is an indicator of the internal and international policies Iran has and what Iran aspires to have? I think that is a very crucial question related to what can be and might be the result of this election.
Right. All those foreign policy change and including even domestic policy change has all started from Rouhani's took the office. So his predecessor, we all know that Ahmadinejad is a very hard leader and a very conservative leader. So he made a lot of very, those very tough words, such as erasing the Israel from the map, so on and so forth. That's make the Iran quite isolated from the international world. But with the Rouhani took the office in the year 2013, and all the picture now beginning to be, I think, brighter for Iran. So with this nuclear deal reached, even though we cannot foresee whether this nuclear deal can be fully implemented or until the last day of this deal, but at least it's a very good start. It's a very good beginning. And it helped the Iranian now to deal with its economic crisis, because with those frozen assets has been already unfrozen, and then they got a lot of investment. So door has been opened. Now, this election of the parliament and the clerical assembly will give another guarantee for this political process, whether it can be continued.
We'll see whether that is going to be the case.